I have got an amazing group of panelists here today. Between everybody, we have pastors, we have church partner liaisons, we have women ministry leaders, domestic violence advocates and expert and founder of Call to Peace Ministries. We have biblical counselors. And today, we're going to be tackling the subject of how to impact your church's culture concerning domestic abuse. So, considering all the hats all our panelists wear, I am looking forward to hearing their answers and being able to share them with you. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as everybody's coming in, if you could say hello in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. It's neat to be able to see our reach as we're doing the interview. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments below. We would be more than happy to answer any questions. We love to hear your feedback and questions. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody just briefly introduce themselves and tell their role, maybe a few of the hats that they wear that I mentioned. All right, I'll let Dan start.
All right, my name's Dan Beck. I serve as the Church Partnerships Coordinator for Call to Peace Ministries. And in that role, I spend a lot of my time. I don't know why I'm echoing. Yeah, are we okay? Okay. All right. So getting a thumbs up from Lauren. All right. So, I spend most of my time consulting with churches and pastors, equipping them to respond to situations, and then also oversee our team of liaisons here at Call to Peace.
And I am Andre Turrentine. I'm one of the church partner liaisons also, but I do a great deal of work with the G5 Men's Abuse Intervention course, and to be able to consult pastors on their steps to engage oppressive or abusive men in their churches has been a focus of mine, and glad to be here today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Raina Newman. I'm right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm one of our leaders here at our church. I wear multiple hats. I wear the hat of women's director, groups director, and I also sit on our executive leadership team. And I'm happy to be here as well. We have benefited from Dan being our church liaison.
And I'm Joy Forrest, and I'm the executive director of Call to Peace Ministry and author of the Call to Peace book and workbook. And I'm also a biblical counselor, have been since about 2005. So I think I'm the biblical counselor you mentioned. You're muted.
Yes, you were the vocal counselor I was thinking of. So let's get started. We have so many different perspectives I believe are going to come from these questions, and I am really looking forward to this. So the first question is, what have you found to be the most effective approach to help your church's culture concerning domestic abuse?
And I think I'm going first. It's a great question. You know, church culture is something that doesn't change quickly. It's kind of the DNA of a church in many ways. And so changing a church culture is something that takes time. But that starts in the realm of domestic abuse. What we've been seeing is elevating an awareness of these issues. And that's been coming, in our experience, best through our Protect the Flock presentations. As we help churches learn how to identify and respond to domestic abuse, and so what I've been seeing is that obviously with Call to Peace, we're very much in the business of helping churches respond to domestic abuse, but we would love to be on the prevention side of that as well, and education plays a big role in helping people identify red flags and see problems even before they begin to manifest in relationships. So the more that we can do in that training realm, I think the more effective churches will be in kind of changing that culture.
Excellent. We'll let Andre add into that.
Yeah, I think Dan hit it on the spot. The only thing I'd add to that is that is the addition and the use of stories of survivors, or the stories of pastors that have had to engage with domestic abuse within their congregations. In some cases, uh, just hearing the story of someone that they know, or that has lived a similar experience than that they have, um, and coming to understand how slippery the slope is of getting sort of stuck in the ruts that eventually is what we see manifesting in domestic abuse situations, really helps to let people know that it's not just a physical violence thing. And so the that's a big part of the protective flock trainings, is helping those that are present for those hear the variety of backgrounds, the variety of economical uh, situations, and even just the background of how many people within the church are dealing with domestic abuse. Helps them to recognize that this is not something that they should take lightly, and that they should start to train their eyes for. So um, the stories and the engagement of um, those that attend those protective flocks have been really helpful in terms of uh, bringing awareness to the church.
Excellent. And Raina, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just want to add to what Dan said about culture. Culture does start from the top. So I know for our church, if we can get our leadership on board, I think that's a really great place to start. And Andre mentioned too, sharing stories. The way we got started too was someone very close to us on staff went through this, and so we learned from the ground up with her. But it took leadership to even jump on that and to start changing that culture and to influence our culture here at our church.
Wow, that is powerful that it starts from the top up. I mean, the top down. Definitely. All right, Joy, what would you like to add?
I totally agree with everything that everyone has said. And I think that, again, the stories I would go back to that helping people understand the impact of abuse on women and children. I remember, Lauren, I think it's okay if I share a little bit of your story
Oh, absolutely.
in your
Yes.
church.
Yes.
That your church, it seemed like when I was talking to them and we talked about the impacts of trauma and post-traumatic stress, is when it looked like light bulbs went on in their head. So understanding the impacts of trauma, because a lot of times they will see it as a marriage problem and that it's equal because she may be very emotional, and that makes them think that she's unstable. But a lot of, or just doesn't seem very stable to them. So helping them understand that impact of trauma, I think, can be very, very powerful in opening the door. And then again, I think what our friend Chris Mole says, he says being very winsome and not going in and overwhelming them with a story that's 100 miles long either. It needs to be, this is what happened, this is the impact. Pastors don't have a whole lot of time, as Dan, you can attest to. And so we don't want to overwhelm them with a lot of information. We give them little bits and pieces to begin with.
Yes, thank you for sharing that. And definitely understanding the impacts of trauma makes a huge difference when they begin to see, oh, wow, this person is living in fear of him, and this is how she was responding, and it begins to play out before their eyes. It's really hard to unsee that, I believe. So thank you guys each for your answers. That was fantastic. So let's move on to our next question, and Andre will begin answering this one first. So we're just kind of go around a round table here. What is the biggest misconception you have had to face about domestic abuse within your church community? And how did you confront this misconception?
That's a good question. Probably the most misunderstood or misconception that they have is that domestic abuse is, they only qualify as the violence of physical violence in the home. Outside of that, there's they're just not aware of how much falls under the umbrella of abuse. And the idea that we take the time to answer those questions by asking questions tends to get their attention. In some cases, laying out a scenario and asking, is this abuse or not? Or how where would you categorize this? And in many cases, it's just about getting the conversation started so that they can actually start weighing some of these things themselves. Until they are challenged on the misconceptions, they don't know it's there. And so that's been a big part for us, is helping people understand that there are some questions that need to be asked. And um, in some cases, like Joy mentioned, that many people think that these are marital issues. But actually, if you ask the questions, you start to recognize this is something beyond just a misunderstanding. And it's good to help people get through that process of asking the questions.
Thank you. Raina.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. And Joy had said it earlier. I would say two things that we are constantly running up against is that this is the marital issue versus an abuse issue. And then the second one I would say that's really equally up there for us is that it doesn't happen in our church. It can't happen in our church. And so when we learn about more situations that arise, yes, are we surprised? Absolutely, because you'll see the family unit and it looks okay on Sunday, but we are all surprised to know that it's just not okay. So we have had those two things. And I would say the ways that we've treated that is to get educated. And one way that we got educated was through the Protect the Flock training for our entire staff. So we started with our leadership team learning more, and then we extended that to the rest of our staff to learn more. We are a highly relational church. And so, especially us as staff. And so I thought if we could get our staff on board and our staff could understand the flags, the yellow flags, the red flags, they're able to utilize that tool, that all the things that we learned in Protect the Flock training that you guys offered us, they could use that on an everyday when they're even just communicating about things that are happening in the marriage. And so I think education is really important, because I saw myself years ago thinking, oh my goodness, this couple has gone to counseling like 7 different counselors, 10 different times for each of the counselors, and nothing worked. But when we know the issues at hand and understand it better, like Andre said, keep asking questions and it will soon uncover itself. But it's, what do we do with those questions? How do we respond to them? And how do we help these families take that next step so that it doesn't continue and continue and continue in this unhealthy, what they think is bad communication, bad marital issues, she's not doing what she's supposed to do, all those things. So I think it's just, we have to educate ourselves as church leaders and as a church in general to love our people well.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything Andre and Raina just stated there. I think one of the things I do run into a fair amount is this idea that abuse is only physical. And so unless the woman shows up with bruises and a bloody nose, that you don't really know what to do with it. But I think maybe even more common is the way that a lot of churches just mutualize the abuse or see it as a marriage problem. And one of the reasons that they come to that conclusion is they'll see what in effect is sinful responses to the abuse that the victim is enduring. They may see her as very belligerent. Maybe her story changes. There's a lot of things that can happen in how the victim presents, and so they view her as maybe unreliable or just emotional. I think somebody already stated that, can be something that happens. And then the fact that the abuser often presents as very calm, cool, and collected, and is often very well liked and respected, maybe even as a good friend of some of the people that are trying to care well. And so the victim's description doesn't really match the person that they know and that she's describing. And so there's a lot of reasons why all of that becomes very confusing for church leadership, and it results in this mutualization of the issues. But I think it's important to remember at that point that even a victim's anger is an appropriate response to the injustice and oppression that she's enduring. Now, what she does with that is important, but it's not this. Her responses to that is not on the same level as the abuse that she's enduring. And so those are common things that we run into.
Yes, I totally agree. I was going to say that a lot of times churches will see it as a 50-50, or like Raina said, it's a marriage problem. Even more so, they might blame her. They may say, if she's provoking him. And so we teach people in counseling, I can't make you do anything. You can't make me do anything. So we need to remember that when we're talking about cases of abuse, that there's nothing that she can do to make him abuse her. He's making a choice. And so helping them to understand that they're making these choices. And so there are a lot of misconceptions. A lot of times we give excuses to the abuser, like he wouldn't have done it, but he's so stressed at work, or that's usually a minor one, or he's got a mental illness or whatever it may be. He's got a drinking problem. They will, and even victims do this. We come up with excuses for why he's being abusive. So that is a misconception, because we need to just recognize right up front that they're making a choice. And that changes the whole game. It changes the game for the victim. I didn't want to admit to it. For many years, I was living with it, and I thought, well, he can't help himself. He really just is out of control. He went through so much trauma in his life, and he just can't help himself. And so moving past those excuses for them is really helpful in moving forward, because Jesus says you'll know the truth will set you free, and you have to recognize that ugly truth before you can embrace the more beautiful truths about him being a healer, and even how to find the freedom.
Thank you, everyone. And leading into our next question, as Raina said, it starts with the top, usually the leadership being able to understand domestic abuse. The next question I have is, how do we then get the congregation to be engaged? What is the most effective approach to helping them also engage in the ministry of advocating for the abused and the oppressed? And Raina, I'm going to let you start with this one.
Sure. I can share what we've done here. It's very organic how we choose our leaders, because it is such a sensitive topic. And of course, the husbands are still here. So, or some of them are. And so it's very much a personal invite to our team to work through whatever gift settings they have to be able to contribute. And so we have different roles that we are building up. And I've got about 14 volunteers right now on our team, 6 pastors and 2 staff women that help me work through all of the different areas that we're working through right now to help these victims and survivors. And so I think for us, it's more or less getting to know who's in your body, who would fit well and who would do well in these types of circumstances, because it is highly sensitive and highly confidential. And as we all know, we want safety for these women as well, and their children as well. And so it's very much a personal invite into that space with us.
Okay. Well, I'm guessing that means I'm up next.
Yes, sorry, that means you're up.
Yes, all right. I agree with Rainey. In fact, I really appreciate all that she just incorporated there, because you heard how the need is being met by folks that have a desire to impact this sphere of influence, to disrupt domestic abuse. And I think this is also where you see the need for education from the top down also, because you have to, even though people have a desire to help, they don't always know where to fit in. And in some cases, they think they have to have a special set of training or skill set in order to lend a hand here, and that's not the case. I think one of the big things that we emphasize through the protective flock trainings is that we can use a hand from wherever it comes from. In addition to those, we have as liaisons, we try to create space for pastors and churches that are doing it well, like Raina's church, to sort of cross-pollinate and help understand what's working best, and even connect folks that have a strength with those that are lacking one, and vice versa. And I think that that's going to be a great deal for helping any congregation and the people members of it to sort of find their space. It's not for everybody, but it is absolutely for a team response.
Thank you. And Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I think that when you think of people serving in different areas of the church, generally, I would think the vast majority of the time, people want to find a place to serve where they can make a difference. Whatever their skills or interests or abilities are, they want to plug in somewhere where they can make a difference and where they feel like God is at work. And so I think this, Andre, I think you use the word awareness, and I think that is a key piece of that. If we're thinking culture and top-down type leadership, there needs to be an elevated awareness, not just about coercive control, domestic abuse, and those dynamics, but on God's heart for the oppressed and what his perspective is on these issues. And as that is communicated in preaching and teaching and becomes a part of the DNA of the church, I think people will begin to see and understand not just abuse, but also the prevalence of it, and to understand that this isn't happening just in a dark corner somewhere in some other part of the world, but that it's happening around them at alarmingly high rates. I think as they understand all of those things, they're going to see that this is an opportunity where God wants to work and can use them regardless of their skills or abilities. If they're willing, and to your point too, not everybody necessarily is going to want to be involved, or maybe shouldn't be involved, but there are a lot of people that can be and should be, but just don't even understand the weight of the issues and the prevalence and those kinds of things. And so as the leadership leads the way in those things, raising awareness, I think people will respond with a desire to reflect God's heart and God's compassion in these situations.
Thank you. Any closing thoughts, Joy?
Yeah, just a few. I really think that Raina, you did it. That was fantastic. I am so grateful for Raina, and it's Southbrook Church down in Weddington, and they just took the information and they have flown with it. So I'm very grateful. But I think it's really wise to handpick the people that are going to be doing this ministry, and instead of having them come to you because they think that they're called to it or whatever it may be. And you'll listen to people's stories. I think it's great to have a survivor involved, but a lot of times the survivors are not healed enough to do the work yet. You might take that person who comes to you and say, hey, Called to Peace Ministries has this advocacy curriculum, or they have a support group. I know you guys are you doing a support group at the church? I thought so. So have them go through that support group 2 or 3 times, because it takes a while to heal. And you'll see the development in that person, so you know who to invite and when they're ready. And then it seems like to me, because I've been doing this work a long time, that some people, even without a lot of training, have this natural ability to recognize and respond well, but it's very rare, very rare. Like I say my friend Darby Strickland was one of those people. She got it. And Raina, you're one of those people. But it doesn't happen every day. Like Jim Upchurch, who was our first church partnership guy, he actually saw it and he kept going, there's something just not right here. And he started investigating and taught himself about abuse before he got the training. And so for most of the rest of us, it's like, maybe we had a situation in our family or a friend or something that helped us to see. But a lot of times people are just not going to see it. And even with a little bit of training, they're still not going to see it. So I just totally love that, that wisdom in being wise enough to choose the people that are going to be a part of that team. And then again, like you said earlier, having the support of your pastoral staff is so important, because we know how these situations can turn. It can get really ugly pretty quickly sometimes. And so having a unified front in case an abuser who maybe is friends with one of the elders or something like that, so that you guys are prepared for that kind of situation if it comes up.
Thank you. And our final question is, what advice would you give someone who's just getting involved as a church in the domestic abuse ministry aspect? Let's see, who wants to start with that one? I'll let you raise your hand. Well, I'll start with Dan.
All right. Well, Andre raised his hand and I got chosen. So there you go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I move Andre? I did not see him raise his hand. It was underneath your name.
No, that's all right. I don't mind. I'll go first. I would say, it's my hesitation is it kind of depends on what your role in the church is. If you're already in pastoral leadership, then I would encourage you to reach out to us and figure out how to attend or even host a Protect the Flock training as maybe a good first step. But otherwise, I would say, talk to your leadership and get them connected with us, with our ministry. You can introduce us to them and take some steps that way. But I think, all of this really starts with elevating awareness. And so if your leadership really if you're not even sure what they know or don't know about these dynamics, you can connect them to our ministry. You can do the work yourself of trying to gently create that awareness, giving them resources and information. But I would say a good first step might be to just connect them directly with our ministry.
Thank you. Now, Andre.
Okay, thank you. I was going to hit right where Dan was. So just in that same vein, it's important to recognize what role you're playing within the congregation. In some cases, it's important for the pastors to understand that they can't carry the entire ball. This is a very different ministry. It takes a different walk in terms of the time and the vision. The team approach is highly recommended here because of the way the abuser operates within a congregation. For someone that's coming alongside and starting out, I've spoken with many that have a heart to advocate, and yet they're having trouble communicating with the pastors or the leadership. Sometimes that's a hard dynamic to break. The leader wants to be the leader at all times. So in some cases, it's good to check your resources like Call to Peace Ministries. We have pastors on staff like Dan and myself, and sometimes that lateral communication plays a really big part in helping to disseminate information that's very useful in helping them understand what they're facing and to start looking for the resources within their congregation. And so that would be things I would add to what Dan was just sharing. Along with that is to, and I might have said it already, but to develop your list of resources. Mm-hmm. Call to Peace being one, local trauma-informed advocates being another, or counselors.
Thank you. And Raina.
Yeah, one thing that we are always praying about here is that we don't want to be the best church in the community. What we want to be is the best church for our community. And so we know we want people to we want to meet them where we are and then help them grow. And so, or where they are and help them grow. And so, Andre, hit this head on, because alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So building resources, building partnerships. So I went through the advocacy training, and one of many things that I've learned in there is to build local resources and partnerships right here in your community. So we are currently working on, we've got our counselors network that we've got of lists of counselors that we send our people to. We also help pay for those as well in certain cases. I'm learning of different organizations that help pay for counseling that we're adding to our resource list. I actually have a counselor coming in who is one of the best counselors in North Carolina in the Charlotte area who deals with abuse. And she's coming in this week to meet with me and our care pastor. And we're going to talk about group therapy and hosting a group therapy session here, because we want to continue to be good stewards of our money here at Southbrook. But, you can only have so much money to go around and to extend. So this is one way that we could be better stewards of our money, is to do group therapy. And she's willing to work with us through that. We are also building a partnership with the Sheriff's Department, the Union County Sheriff's Department right down the street. And so in the last couple of weeks, I've had meetings with some of the deputies that patrol this area for us. But we are building really strong relationships, and we are working together now. So that's been like an aha moment. I would also say, understand your local shelters, understand what they do, what they don't do. That's one thing that we're learning too, is building that relationship with them. We had an incident where we needed to understand more about the local shelter and their role, and how we can partner together and support the woman as best as we can as a team, because we can't do it alone. And so we want to refer to the places where we know that can help them even more. But I think it's building your resource list, like Andre talked about, and that could include legal attorneys in the area that that they are good at what they do, and they understand coercive control, they understand abuse, they know how to work with the woman and to work behind the scenes, not just in the courtroom, but behind the scenes too. So we're building that resource as well. So there's a lot of different places. So I think one thing, we feel so overwhelmed as a church, because we can't be all things to everyone, but we sure can partner. And I think that would really help churches feel a little bit more at ease, is you're not alone. We call to Peace probably right now on a weekly basis now. So I've had conversations with Portia in the last month, and then every couple of months I'm calling Dan on something, and we don't know what to do. But Call to Peace is a phenomenal resource, because they will point us to different resources as well. And so we have them right here in our back pocket on my phone via email. So I would say Call to Peace is actually one of our strongest resources we do have, and then building your local resources as well.
Lovely. That was really good. That just warmed my heart. All right, Joe, your turn.
I'm going to move down there and start going to Southbrook.
I know. I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, how can I get to this church? I need to go there.
Great. I love it. Oh, no. And there's really nothing I can add to this, except as we were talking about the Protect the Flocks, I wanted to make a note. Kathy put one of our older ones in the comments here, but that's an older one, and we have updated it. We continue to update it and improve it. And I think that there's really nothing like having a Protect the Flock in person if you can. People are like, why are you flying across the country to do these trainings? When you could do it by Zoom, you don't get to meet the people. You can't build relationships very easily on Zoom like you can in person. And so we've had comments and questions that we would have never had if we hadn't done them in person. And so we just think it's really a great thing, if you can possibly do it, to do it in person. So that's all I have to say. I mean, you guys did a fantastic job answering that question. I don't think there's anything left for me to say about that.
Yes, this whole interview was so insightful. I appreciate it. And so many may be watching this and be like, what is my next steps now? I am very interested in learning about how to impact my church's culture concerning domestic abuse. And I would say definitely one of the next steps is to have a consultation with one of our church partner liaisons, and I can drop a link into the comments, and you can schedule an appointment to talk to them, and they will answer your questions about this, and you can schedule a Protect the Flock training to come to your church. And yes, we would love to answer any questions you have later. If you're watching this, you can leave them in the comments, and we are more than happy to come back and answer those. I am so sorry.
It's okay. Maybe Dan, if you've got anything else you want to say, you can wrap it up. How about that?
No, as Lauren was saying, I think feel free to reach out to us. You can email me, churchpartners@calltopeace.org. But we'd encourage you to check out our website if you're interested in Protect the Flock. Go ahead and make that inquiry, and we can get something on the books for you, and at least give you more information of what exactly that looks like and how you can go about hosting it. But yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I will drop those links into the comments. So please reach out to Dan or Andre, and they would love to talk to you more. We are excited about what the Lord is doing and seeing so many churches jump on board with this and advocating for women within their church. Truly, one church can make a huge difference in their community. So thank you so much to everybody who partners with us, and for those who listened in today. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you.